President Biden spinning his chaotic exit from Afghanistan as an extraordinary success, as his administration refuses to rule out working with the Taliban in the future. Privately, administration officials say they're horrified over abandoning Americans. One telling Politico, quote, "I'm absolutely appalled and literally horrified we left Americans there. It was a hostage rescue of thousands of Americans in the guise of a NEO, non-combatant evacuation operations, and we have failed that no-fail mission." Biden's chief of staff, Ron Klain, doing his best, however, to paint a rosy picture.
It's easy to second guess, but let's just be clear. America was in this war for 20 years, and I think any effort to unwind that, any effort to bring our troops out, any effort to end our military presence in Afghanistan was going to be filled with heartbreaking scenes and difficulties. And I think the Biden administration has managed that as well as it could be managed under the circumstances we were placed in.
Meanwhile, the Taliban showed off while decked out in billions of dollars of U.S. military equipment. And the Biden administration is still not ruling out working with the terror group in the future.
What is the Taliban? Are they now our frenemy? Are they our adversary? Are they our enemy? What are they?
Well, it's hard to put a label on it.
As far as our dealings with them at that airfield or in the past year or so, in war, you do what you must in order to reduce risk to mission and force, not what you necessarily want to do.
Any possibility of coordination against ISIS-K with them?
It's possible.
Man, that was upbeat. All right, Evil Shannon, thank you for taking the time out to come here.
Good to be with you.
So President Biden calls it an extraordinary success. But you can only apply that phrase if you apply it to a very narrow space, like we got the plane in the air. Mm-hmm. That's it. Because if you incorporate the horrifying process and the loss of life, how can you say that?
Well, groups also classifying it as an extraordinary success. China.
Yeah.
Russia, Iran. I mean, we have to be very cognizant of how this plays on the world stage, because clearly there are a number of people who are cheering, including other terror groups and the Taliban, saying this is a defeat of the U.S. But when you hear them say we did the best we could with the situation that we have, I looked at this letter that came out a couple of days ago from 90-some retired generals, admirals, other top military officials who say, you can't tell me that General Milley and that Secretary Austin thought this was the best plan ever if they didn't fully push back against this president and say this was a terrible idea, they should resign, or they should resign now. People need some kind of accountability, because to say that, and they go back to the pivot of like it was time to leave. Almost everybody agrees on that. It's not about that. It's how we left. And if our military leaders really gave this president this advice and said this was the best scenario, then we need some answers. Yeah,
they're continuing with the bait and switch. Nobody's debating the decision to leave. It was how it was pulled off, Will, which was, everybody agrees, was horrifying. One thing they don't talk about as much anymore are the allies. We understand that the Americans are still there, but what about our allies that we left behind? They were there to help us, and we just,
We left so much behind. And it's interesting that they qualify this as a success, Greg, by ignoring what we left behind. What they're looking at is the 100,000 that were evacuated, ignoring the 1,000, 2,000, 300, whatever the number may be that we left behind. That has all the hope of a doctor walking in and telling you know what? You're 90% cancer-free. Mm-hmm. That's not an encouraging statement coming from your doctor. Brought to you, by the way, from the people with the same mindset that said, here's a mostly peaceful riot. Right. They have a way not of seeing the silver lining, but of creating the silver lining. So I would suggest you ignore them. Listen to the silent voices or the anonymous voices in their administration. Listen to the Obama administration officials who are throwing them under the bus. Listen to our vets that say our standard is leave no man behind. And more importantly, don't act like this is a catastrophe that you accidentally stepped into on the sidewalk. You created this catastrophe. It is your burden and your obligation to ensure that no American is left behind. There's no spinning, no lying, no creating a pseudo-reality out of that.
They have the benefit, too, of that. It doesn't seem like the media are actively seeking out anonymous sources the way they did with Trump. There would be hundreds of them right now if this were Trump. Geraldo, speaking of allies being left behind, you had a serious issue with your past interpreter. Has there been any news or?
Here he is. That's him right next to me. That's Akbar Shinwari. He was 18 years old when we met him. That's your brother. He begged us to go to, it's Craig on the left. Yeah. But Akbar begged us to go with him, take him with us back in the Tora Bora days. He stayed with us the entire time, 12 assignments in Afghanistan. He's a wonderful guy. We were so worried about getting him out, but Fox News did an excellent job under Jay Wallace's leadership. We really got virtually all of our people out. And many of the other networks did the same. I mean, it is because it's news when things go badly. The fact that this went right and we got this dear friend out, and hopefully my family and I will sponsor him here in the United States. We look forward to his arrival here. But you know,
they should move in with you, Geraldo.
But I said that I will sponsor them. Either he'll live.
I see a reality show.
He'll live next door.
Ooh,
I see a reality show.
But one point I want to make is that JFK, after the Bay of Pigs humiliation, when he took credit, said, "Victory has 100 fathers. Defeat is an orphan." And that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing, let's laser focus on the thing we did right, getting the 120,000 people out like Akbar. And they did, they did get it. It was one of the most magnificent airlifts in the history of the human race. What went badly, however, and we're going to live with it, it's going to stick in our craw, is watching these people who were savages and brutes and were our enemies strutting around wearing our clothes. I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to bear. We're not programmed for it. But it is our new reality.
David, this something that drives me crazy is that we keep saying that we have this, or the administration keeps saying we have this enormous leverage with the Taliban, because we have these frozen assets or whatever they're referring to. But it feels like we're basically telling them to extort us. Like we're actually being our own extortionists. We're saying, you know what? Feel free to hamper the withdrawal until we give you money. That's kind of what we're saying. Go ahead. We're going to give you money if you enable us to get these people out.
We have treasure, but they have blood.
Right.
We found out a majority of the interpreters, other U.S. visa applicants, were left behind in Afghanistan. Wall Street Journal reporting today, a majority. And then we found out that at least 500 journalists from Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, among other government agencies, 500 journalists and their families were also left behind. So it was too much to expect President empathy. I thought that was always a joke, but instead we got commander and callousness. Mm-hmm. Biden and company and all of these Democrats have displayed a real total lack of respect and regard for the American people. It's the same rubes and rednecks and the flyover folks, but they are looking at, they're dishing out Washington bio waste. They're looking at the American people and telling demonstrable lies over and over and over again. And anybody who has the capability of hearing and seeing knows that they're being lied to. And these, like yesterday, couldn't have gone better. And I think one of the reasons that General Milley and SecDef Austin only took 3 questions today is because they're trying to avoid being put in a situation where they have to either lie for the president or tell the American people the truth. And the most dangerous thing to me is Joe Biden clearly is acting like a one-term president. He doesn't give a damn, and it has scorched America. It has scorched Afghanistan. It's a scorched future because he won't be around when the next terror attack arrives on our shores.
Also, just before we go, Ron Klain saying it's easy to second guess. We should have been second guessing more. We should have been first guessing. We probably wouldn't have been in this mess if more people were engaged, and I'm including myself in that. It was the absence of second guessing that let this unfold for so long and then end like this.
I do think that leaks, though, it won't be the journalists going to the insiders. They're going to be texting. When one cockroach comes out, then that's when they all show up.
But you were referring to the war itself, 20 years of lies that we averted our glance from.
Exactly.
And how often did we hear about friendly fire casualties and things, the ugly side of the war?
Yeah.
Second guessing a political candidate was one of the least vetted in American history as well.
True. All right, coming up. President Biden accused of lying about Afghanistan over what he said in a leaked phone call. Bet it was perfect.
Heal the pain.
President Biden of lying to Americans about Afghanistan after Reuters released a transcript from Biden's final phone call with the then president of Afghanistan, Ghani. Back in July, Biden said to Ghani, quote, "I need not tell you the perception around the world and in parts of Afghanistan, I believe, is that things are not going well in terms of the fight against the Taliban. And there is a need, whether or not it is true, there is a need to project a different picture." That conversation raising big questions because President Biden has been saying nobody could have known the Afghan army would collapse. The White House not denying the report earlier today.
Was the president in any way pushing a false narrative in that call with the Afghan president?
I think it's pretty clear. Again, I'm not going to go into details of a private conversation, but what we saw over the course of the last few months is a collapse in leadership. And that was happening even before Ghani left the country. What the president has conveyed repeatedly, privately, and publicly is you need to stand up and lead your country.
All right, Dagan, so a conversation that they felt the perception was not good, that there were real problems with Afghanistan and their ability to stand up against the Taliban, but we couldn't have foreseen this. So how does that all calculate for you?
Well, James Freeman in the Journal wrote a column about this, the use by Biden of the word perception over and over again. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, that the perception beats out reality. That was what was most important to him. So it was lies over lives. And we know that again, they were trying to paint a picture to the American people that was not true, because that State Department cable that was sent in the middle of July called for the State Department to use tougher language in describing the atrocities being committed by the Taliban. And just bear with me. I have a whole theory about this. So I think the whole planning for this withdrawal, if you could actually call it that, started with the end result. Joe Biden on the 20th anniversary of September 11th wanted to have a one-man ticker tape parade. It was a publicity stunt, and they not literally, figuratively, wrote the speech for that day before the withdrawal even began. It was all about getting the troops out. Why did they start the troop withdrawal before civilians, before our allies and friends, before even the diplomats in the country? So they were doing it backwards. They were letting the end dictate the path of getting out. All it mattered was the troops on the ground. And right now, because, again, they think the American people are stupid, they're trying to put Vaseline on the lens of history, thinking that, oh, it'll fade.
Well, Geraldo, there have been some people who've gotten in trouble over phone calls before. How do you think this one's going to play?
Well, I think that it is as innocuous as the Ukraine president phone call by President Trump. I'm not sure, because I want to give, the benefit of the doubt to the president, that he wasn't just spinning Ghani, trying to say, come on, buck up. However screwed up it is, however it's going down the toilet, let's show the world our best face, our strong face, because your troops need you, Mr. President, as they did. Evidence when he split with hundreds of millions of our taxpayer dollars, his army just collapsed on him. So I'm not sure. I withhold judgment against President Biden. I think it could have been him just spinning Ghani and trying to buck him up and get in there and fight.
We also had reports that Ghani was worried about the optics. Well, that he was saying, I don't want you to start this mass evacuation. It sucks out the credibility or the confidence in our forces and our ability to get things done. So both sides seem to be a little bit worried about how this was playing out.
When you were playing that clip, we all scoffed. Greg said, which side? I wondered when Jen Psaki was talking about a collapse in leadership if she was talking about the United States of America. When she said, stand up and lead your country, I hope she was saying that in the Oval Office, because that's what's missing. You may reserve judgment, Geraldo. I'll pick up your slack, and I will pass judgment. And I'm going to pick up where Dagan left off, because this is the big story to me. Sometimes we use words like spin or political optics or even lies sometimes, and I worry they're not even strong enough, because what's going on is we are creating a pseudo-reality. We're passing off on the American people a reality that does not exist. And it's not limited to this story. We have overplayed COVID fears far beyond what the rational fear is for the average human being out there. We have convinced people out there that unarmed black men are being gunned down in the streets by cops. And now we are suggesting that Afghanistan was a success. These are false realities. They're pseudo-realities. They do not exist. And the reason they're being passed off on the American people is to accumulate power for the one that is telling the lies. This story, it is very clear who would benefit from the lie. This is not reality.
You're not saying on the police shootings they don't happen, but it's not this massive number. People will be stunned to find out what the real number is and what the circumstance is in most of that.
People have no conception, Shannon.
They don't.
Vastly overestimated. Even conservatives watching, there's studies on this. Even conservatives watching think the number's in the thousands every year, when the number is in single digits.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's all about perception on this.
To quote Carl Bernstein, every day of the year last year and the year before, this is bigger than Watergate, right? You have to imagine, if you can remember, the last time you watched CNN, if this were Trump, they would have to be helicoptering therapy llamas into the set because they would be passing out, choking on their tongues. This is, I disagree with Rollo, this is bigger than the perfect phone call. It's pretty, colluding with a foreign power to lie about the state of the war, right? Again, imagine if this was coming from Trump. This would be the biggest story ever. I wonder if this is being covered actually at all. So here's the thing. My question is, was the lie meant to help us? Because sometimes politicians leaders have to lie to help their country. We know that. Or was it to help him? Was the lie designed to convince people to stop being against this fast pullout, to cooperate with what Joe wanted? Because that's really bad. If a general said, hey, we leave this place, it's going to collapse in days, and Joe goes like, no, we have the Taliban on the ropes, according to the Afghan president. That's a problem because then that lie prevented anyone from mounting an alternative to this disaster. We could have still had to withdraw. It could have been differently done. Obviously, it could have been done differently. So this lie actually ended up causing this disgusting display for the last, 10 days. It's a big deal.
Can I go back to the support llamas?
Yes.
How do we go about getting those?
Well, you know what? I actually have a few back at my place, but they spit a lot, which is I kind of like.
All right, we'll check on it. Coming up, Kamala Harris being blasted as the absentee VP for laying low during all this chaos in Afghanistan.
Fields bipartisan blowback from their botched Afghanistan withdrawal. One fact remains. Vice President Kamala Harris has all but disappeared from public view. The second in command, who bragged about being the last person in the room, has hardly commented on the crisis, and that may be on purpose. Fox News contributor Joe Concha labeling Kamala Harris as the absentee VP by design, saying this, quote, since Harris took office, she has yet to hold even one formal solo press conference. Not one. And it's also been weeks since Harris sat down for a one-on-one interview. There's a reason for that. Greg, is Kamala Harris a liability for the Biden administration, or are they a liability to her future political career at this point?
I have a theory, but first I want to let everybody know that on Gutfeld tonight, we'll be doing an in-depth investigation into her whereabouts. Just a key hint, we haven't found her. So, but there'll be lots of new breaking information.
Where's Raldo?
Yeah, exactly. She went from the star pupil, to the weird aunt you keep in the attic. She went, it's an amazing transition, and it is so fast. Voted basically most likely to be president, and she could barely get free Wi-Fi at Arby's. So I don't know. Okay, my theory. Where's my theory? I have a theory I wrote down here. Okay, here's my theory. The administration got bad so fast, keeping her hidden is preferable so she doesn't get smeared by Joe's failures. So she's behind the glass like an axe. So they're just waiting for the right time to break the glass and take her out. We really don't know how bad she is, but we're going to have to, Democrats are going to assume it can't be any worse than this. That's my theory. No?
No, I like your theory. I have a feeling I know when they're going to break that glass. When they're going to pull her out. When racial politics make their way back to the forefront of the national conversation. If I'm Kamala Harris right now, I'm extremely offended because you have been used. Mm-hmm. They used you to pander to a voting base to get votes. They had a minority, they had a woman, and now that they don't need her, they have shelved her because her approval rating is -19. It's clear that whenever she's out front, she does hurt. She is a liability to the administration. But if I'm Kamala Harris, I'm saying, well, I wasn't a liability for you, Joe, I guess, when you needed to get elected. So I think Kamala has a right to be very, very upset, but the Biden administration's in a very tough position. Do we admit that we used Kamala to get elected, or do we run her back out and hurt our numbers the way hers have plummeted?
Until the anger and rage over this Afghanistan withdrawal fades, hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully the American people will remember. They've got to keep her hidden because she's clearly not very good on her feet with Lester Holt. I haven't been to Europe. And when she cut off the female journalist, she's not a good enough liar. She can't tap dance around this disaster well enough to put her out there in public, my opinion, Geraldo.
I think that you remember, and you have to remember, her historic significance. Black woman, first South Asian, first woman in the White House. Remember that, and remember the burden that she carries, and remember how she was so misused on the southern border. They sent her to Guatemala. They totally dictated her movements, and she took the fall for it. Now she is so negatively perceived. Now her popularity, I read, was 34%. So that's extraordinarily low for someone so historic who was supposed to prop up old Joe. So I think that what this is now is a pragmatic, ruthlessly pragmatic decision. Keep her on the low down right now. When the time comes, if it is about race, you can always bring her back.
But she proved that she can't handle herself in those interviews.
Well,
Shannon, again, she's got the crown on her head. I'm not making, but she's got to keep it there, and she stepped on it.
Yeah, but think about this. I think Will has a great point. She was a great fit for this ticket. Obviously, checked some serious boxes, and it was exciting. It was historic for a lot of people. But remember, during the primaries, she never caught on fire. She wasn't great in the primary debates. She wasn't polling well. She couldn't raise money. She had to drop out. So while she was a good fit on the ticket, whether she can be a good leader and manage things well is a totally different question. And so far, she's gotten the worst assignment, which is the border. And so that's going to be a difficult thing for any vice president because it's an unsolvable problem. She's probably going to be a professional tiebreaker, given what's going on in the Senate. That's what she's going to do in Washington is go up there and break ties whenever it matters. But it's not like she showed during the primary process that the American people loved what she had to say substantively or that she was up to taking that next step.
Well, did you have something you want to say?
No, I was just going to say I miss her laugh. It was always brightened my day whenever she would laugh.
So is it not your ringtone?
Yes, it is. It is. But I keep thinking, do you guys watch Storage Wars? I keep thinking that I'm going to watch an episode and they're going to open up a container and she's going to leap out.
That shows how kinky you are that you watch Storage Wars.
Well, you never know what you
think
find.
The vice president's hiding in there.
Yes.
Jump out.
No, that's not kinky. 90 Day Fiance is kinky.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Yeah, exactly.
Naked and Afraid.
Naked.
And the show, too.
No, it's naked and scared is how we say it.
That's our version.
Greg Gutfeld. Up next, the disaster in Afghanistan. Be damned. Liberals like Michael Moore are claiming we are blessed to have Joe Biden as president.
President Biden left a marker for history today. President Biden delivered the most accurate and most honest speech by an American president about Afghanistan.
I have been completely surprised and feeling that we're all blessed to have Joe Biden in the White House in these last months, his first year in office, all the things that he's done.
Geraldo, how do you look at that and come away, this situation over the past, 2 weeks, 2 months, and say, absolutely wonderful. Bravo, Joe Biden.
Well, it's Michael Moore saying it, Will. It's not like it's the general public is saying it. Michael Moore, who supported Bernie Sanders, very, very hard left. And to him, it's all about the result. It's not how, it's like sausage. It's not how you make it. It's made. He wanted, Michael Moore and people who believe as he does, wanted the war ended at all cost. The war was ended. What Michael Moore said, and I think it is true, is that many, particularly in the dawn of Fox News and with the strength of programs like Gutfeld and the kind of reordering of the American public, there is real fear among liberals of being called out by conservatives, and conservatives saying, you're a coward, you're a traitor, you didn't want the war to end because you have no backbone, you're this or that. And Michael Moore said that Joe Biden had the courage to blow through the kind of fears, the phobias that liberals generally have when making a stand. Joe Biden made the stand. We're out of Afghanistan. A lot of people wanted out of Afghanistan. He's the one who did it. To Michael Moore and people who believe like he does, that's all that counts.
Dagan, I think to Geraldo's analogy, they don't care how the sausage is made. They seem completely in that vein, incapable or unwilling or uninterested in differentiating that we left from how we left.
Right. But I think that's more simple what's going on here. These people are completely irrelevant and have no credibility. So they're happy if they can be the most bloated bloviator in the room, so to speak. It's a way of just getting attention. Number one, and I don't know what it would take for them to really turn on Joe Biden. Would it be him throwing sacks of puppies into the Potomac? Would they turn on him then? Or if he was lashing Santa Claus with a cat of nine tails? I think that they're just attached to Biden at all costs.
To me, what's revealed, Greg, is the true enemy here is the American people. I wasn't on the show the other day. I'm sure you guys talked about Arnie Duncan's tweet. I hope you talked about Arnie Duncan's horrendous tweet. Let me share with you Dan Rather's tweet. Take a look at what he had to say about what's going on in Afghanistan. It's worth noting that many of the same people attacking the Biden administration for leaving women's rights behind Afghanistan are eager to control women's bodies and choice in the United States. So pro-life equals Taliban.
Of course. And so, but the great thing about this is we can also do it back to them. For example, the same people that are lauding this kind of deep, humiliating withdrawal where we abandoned our allies in an authentic takeover of a government, the people that are lauding that are calling January 6th an insurrection. So you can go do it right back. How, like I think it's going to be very hard for the media to continue to exaggerate what happened on January 6th, with their precious few seconds of tape against the unfolding spectacle that we just went through. Also, you're going to see an increase in the words seize and pounce, which is how the media reports any criticism of Joe by the Republicans as you get closer to, when they realize that, oh my God, this is going to leave a mark, and it is. They're going to say, oh, you're pouncing on a tragedy for political gain, as they do that every single day of their lives.
So, Shannon, that's what will happen, right? Greg's right. Now they'll be able to quickly pivot to January 6th, or Arnie Duncan will pivot to anti-masking, or Dan Rather to pro-life measures. Get off of Afghanistan, celebrate Joe, and get to a different issue quickly.
Well, and they should, if you're going to be based on the polls. Like Geraldo said, Michael Moore does not represent average America. The USA Today Suffolk University poll about how President Biden has managed the withdrawal from Afghanistan, 26% approved, 62% disapproved, and that was before we had the tragic loss of 13 American service members. So I got to think those numbers are even worse now. These guys don't speak for the average American. But yeah, there will be look over here, shiny thing to try to get away from what most American people think has been a disaster.
Absolutely. That will be a clear and obvious play starting probably tomorrow. Some other hugely divisive issue that will commandeer all of the attention. Be on the lookout because it's a distraction.
They have one advantage, and that is when you do pull off a Band-Aid, the most intense pain is up front, and what they're hoping for is that over time that pain will fade. And I hope it does fade too. But you've got Americans and allies over there.
Yeah.
I don't know how it will.
But you have to be careful not to start another Rambo syndrome, where we lost to Vietnam and Rambo's whole raison was we lost, but if you stuck it out, if you just were just powerful enough and brave enough, you could have.
I don't want people to forget, because they need to remember that Joe Biden is a great deal more dangerous to the lives of people in service and Americans, and what he might do in terms of you scorched Afghanistan. Watch what they're going to do with domestic policy, and that's on deck.
Exactly. And we have to go. We have to go here. But the point is, this story isn't over. The Rambo analogy, I like that too, because you know what? There are private special operatives right now in Afghanistan still trying to get people out of that country. There are Americans playing Rambo
and I'm sure
to do
we'll
the job that this
movies.
Administration did not
We'll
do.
have 50 movies extolling their virtue, and the feeling that they'll generate is bitterness over the pullout, even though most of them, before it all started, wanted to pull out.
And besides, we do have to concentrate on the growing white supremacist movement.
Back to white rage. Back to white rage. Luckily, our military can focus on what matters.
Right.
Ahead, good luck convincing anyone with this rhetoric. CNN anchor Don Lemon erupting on people who haven't.
As COVID cases rage in several locations across the country, the CDC telling unvaccinated people not to travel over this Labor Day weekend. With CNN's Don Lemon going even further, pointing this scolding message to those who still refuse to get the shot.
Some people who are so selfish are saying, it's my freedom and I don't want to get vaccinated, I don't want to do that. Okay, fine. But think about someone other than yourself. And if you don't believe that COVID is real and that it can affect your health and possibly take your life, don't go to the hospital then when you get sick.
Don't go to the hospital if you get sick. That's a little harsh, Dagan. But isn't it logical to say that vaccination plus mask equals travel? Unvaccinated, isn't it prudent for unvaccinated people not to travel?
If I wasn't vaccinated, I think this is a personal choice. If I wasn't vaccinated, then I'm a hermit. I might stay at home, but that is a personal choice. Unvaccinated people to vaccinated people, if you got the shot, you should be fine. But I want to expose, and I'm actually not going to steal this from Greg because I know Greg has talked about this before, but this exposes the combination of like dumbassery and cruelty by Don Lemon. Because he's literally saying if you smoked and you get lung cancer,
Right.
you don't get any treatment. If you didn't wear sunscreen, you have melanoma, you don't get cancer treatment. You ate too many cheeseburgers, no open heart surgery for you. So that's, again, he's too stupid to be on TV, but he's perfect for CNN.
But there's two things going on here, Will, and I know how deeply you feel about this. There's the premise that unvaccinated people should not travel because of the risk, the exponential risk they pose to people, children, for example. And the other thing is the cruelty of the the cavalier. Well, don't go to the hospital then if you were that arrogant not to get vaccinated. But in terms of the first, the CDC is advising people if you're unvaccinated, don't travel.
So let me work that backwards. Regarding the second point you made, whether or not it's cruel, Dakin's exactly right. We're veering dangerously close to exterminationist language.
Exterminationist.
Absolutely. That's the next step. Putting the unvaccinated into someplace else, camps, whatever it may be. When you listen to the cruelty of Don Lemon right there, who you're absolutely right, has managed the wonderful concoction of being stupid and mean at the same time, then you are looking at a very dangerous person, a dangerous mindset that is getting increasingly common out there, Geraldo. And now to your other point about whether or not the unvaccinated pose a threat to other people. In particular, you point out children. That's not true. That is false. What we now know, the data shows, is that vaccinated people transmit COVID at almost the same level of unvaccinated. What the vaccination provides you is protection against severity of illness. It doesn't seem to protect you from ability to acquire or give it to somebody else. And the CDC, for what it's worth, by the way, is just not a credible voice anymore when it comes to COVID.
You believe, Shannon, pick up what Will is saying. Do you believe that it is so wrong for the CDC to say if you're not vaccinated, stay home?
Well, they also tell people not to eat raw cookie dough, but I'm guessing millions of Americans do that too. So they have suggestions. This is a little bit different situation. But listen, the folks who are supportive of Governor Ron DeSantis and what he's done down in Florida, he's got plenty of critics, but his team will say, look at the percentages. If you berate people versus in Florida, it's a very open situation. Don't go there if that's not your cup of tea. 68% of people over the age of 12 there are vaccinated. Here in New York, where if you don't have your vaccination card, you can't go to restaurants and gyms and that kind of thing, 65%. And they're constantly berating people here. So I don't think that you win people over to your argument by, saying things about them and insulting them in the way that Don Lemon is choosing to do. Maybe the Florida-New York comparison is worth a look on that front.
But I get it. But again, what is it? It's not the rudeness of Don Lemon, isn't it? The advice is the advice, good advice. If you're unvaccinated, stay home.
I don't know. I just wonder when CNN will stop pretending to be news. Their anchors are more opinionated than Boston cab drivers. They are the national shame network. Every hour now is about how bad you are. Like when I'm listening to him, right? I'm trying to figure out who he's talking to because whoever he's talking to, I don't know these people.
And deny COVID exists?
Yeah,
Who is that person?
So what he's doing is he's creating a straw man, and then he creates this kind of prison of two ideas. You're either this or you're this, therefore you should be over there. He's not actually interested in persuasion at all. He's indulging the dopamine rush that he gets from shaming people. He's like a human walking tweet. But I do think also he's doing this for the attention because his ratings are tanking. And why are they tanking? Might be some new competition at 11 o'clock.
Dakin is volunteering.
Starts with a G.
But I think that's what this is. It is. This is all they do now on CNN. They're so irrelevant that all they can do is shame people. They have to.
You have not answered my question.
Before we go, I want to respect the question you're asking.
All right, thank you. Is it good advice if you're unvaccinated not to travel?
Yeah, it's a very specific question, which you didn't ask me, but you asked everyone else. So I'll answer directly to you. The answer is that unvaccinated should balance their own risk reward. Their only threat is to themselves. So you should balance that question for every individual out there. Yep. Balance their own individual risk reward analysis.
So if you knew someone getting on your plane was unvaccinated, you want to sit by them?
I don't care at all.
We don't.
I am vaccinated. I wouldn't care.
Wait a minute.
One more thing.
I'd sit next to
We were flying traveling.
One more thing is next.
Last year, everyone flew unvaccinated.
Greg is sitting next to Don Lemon.